there is some kind of race happening right now. It's called the Mexican 1000. It's all these dune buggies all over the town right now. It's really cool. It's popping down here. I don't know, do people say that anymore? Am I old? We're Will and Em, and we're living on the hook in our sailboat, Appa. After years of plotting our escape from the Fire Nation, aka our day jobs, we're finally home free on the open seas. Living off the land and learning how to take life at a much slower pace, we're embarking on our monomyth with our trusty sidekick, Lou Dog. Grab a beer, kick your feet up, and let us take you on this wild ride aboard our sailing bison.
All right. Our friends Mitch and Christine will be here in 3 days. And this northerly wind that you hear and I feel right now is the last northerly wind we'll have before they come. So what that means for us, who like to sail instead of motor, is we've got to go today and head towards the classic Honeymoon Cove. We've been there several times before. It's our starting and stopping point whenever we go in and out of Escondido. Helps us save a little money because it's free to anchor. So we stay over there as long as we can. But yeah, this is the wind for us. So I'm going to get the boat ready here. We're going to probably just let the sails out and blast straight on south. It's 17 and a half nautical miles away, due south from us now. The boat's ready to go. Today's going to be a fun one. I'm going to go ahead and try sailing off anchor all on my own. So I've never done it before. Haven't done it on this boat for sure. But today's really the perfect conditions for it, and there's not much for me to mess up and hit. There is that super yacht over there now, but I'd really have to mess up to hit that thing. Fingers crossed.
Very fun experience expanding our sailing capabilities on this boat. We got pretty good at navigating Nelly, but we weren't anchoring very frequently on that boat. So the sailing onto and off anchor stuff has been a really fun learning experience for us.
If you've been with us for a while, you'll know we've been sailing together for almost a decade. We're not your average young buck sailing channel. We didn't spontaneously abandon our land life with zero sailing experience and suddenly find ourselves offshore. That's not to knock those who forge their path in that manner. We have a lot of respect for them taking the leap. It's just not who we are.
Gotta enjoy it.
We took calculated risks to get here, and that mentality is how we make pretty much every decision. It's worked incredibly well for us so far, and we hope to show you that achieving your dreams is just an equation. Finding the answer to making it a reality is simply a careful manipulation of variables. Don't forget to slap that subscribe button and turn on your notifications to learn how we made it happen. We're also now on Patreon. To support the channel and get access to all of our sale data and other exclusive benefits, check out the link in the description below.
We're about halfway right now. You see out there in the background, an island, the volcanoes where we came from. And then down here, that island with the points is where we're going. But a very casual sail. We're doing about 3.5 knots and about 7 to 8 knots of apparent wind. It's coming directly from downwind. And yeah, very nice sail, very casual.
Honeymoon Cove really isn't what this episode is about. For fear of boring you to death, we're gonna fast forward really quickly into the near future where we're already in Puerto Escondido.
We're back in Escondido.
We made it. We already got fuel. I don't know if we've talked about it at all, but our macerator was clogged or something was going on with the black water tank. So basically we couldn't use our pump out system built into the boat. So we also got a machine pump out on the dock as well. So we're full on water, we're full on gas, gasoline and diesel. Gasoline for the dinghy, diesel for the boat. And we've emptied our black water tank. So we're in really good shape starting out. But we have one major problem. We got in after the office closed. So we can't renew our fingerprints, which means we don't get hot showers tonight. Womp, womp, womp. Will's had enough of my shit today already.
No, I mean, it's getting hot enough out now that I don't really feel the need for hot showers the way that I used to.
I do.
I could go for a haircut.
Yeah, we could do a haircut today. Make the most of our time.
Yeah, actually, I have a whole list of chores for us to do today and tomorrow and the next day and Thursday.
Will has a thing about to-do lists.
You should see our log, too. Join our Patreon. You can see our log there. A lot of good data.
Yeah, we do keep really good track of our onboard data, I will say.
You said we?
I do the provisioning sheet.
Oh, yes, you do.
I get no credit around here. Anywho, I guess we're going to do Will's to-do list for the rest of the day, haircut included. We have 2 days before Mitch and Christine arrive. Let's get to work. Cue montage.
Chores day 2.
Now that I'm laying down, though, I'm tired.
Mm-hmm. It's dangerous down here.
It's dangerous down here, but it's also hot, so it's not totally dangerous. Let's go to dinner.
Let's go to dinner. Good work today. Cinema view.
Cinema view.
My right nostril's clogged and it's really throwing me off. Some of you have seen me do a lot of routine maintenance checks. It's every time we're going motoring. It's every time we're going sailing. It's every time we're underway or undersailing. This is my co-star. She just laughs at me.
I'm still just replaying that cinema view. Cheese and rice. Routine maintenance checks.
I do a lot of routine maintenance checks on most systems around the boat. And the reason I do that is I keep finding things. She like that, and welcome to Will's workshop. We found water in the bilge today, which means we need to do something.
We found water in the bilge today?
Yeah. Which means we need to do something.
Oops. Listen, I've had my headphones on like all day today.
Yeah, that's alright.
Is it the water maker again?
It is the water maker again, but a whole different part of the water maker.
No.
Yeah. A much simpler part.
Oh, okay. I'm currently editing the Will's Workshop that you're about to see.
Not that you're about to see.
That you have already seen.
Yeah.
Hopefully. If not.
In the future that you've already seen.
If you haven't seen Will's Workshop water maker style, you click the button.
Yeah, we actually get into the workshop in that one. This one is not going to be so intense.
Oh. But it's a to edit.
She says I don't talk at the camera.
0% talking at the camera. He's got the camera angled so that you can't even see what he's doing on the workbench. Useless. It's not useless.
Yeah, that was a lot of videoing.
I have gone through 4 30-minute video clips already. And you know how many I've left?
A lot, dude. You're scratching the surface right now.
Yeah, like 15.
There goes Wild Loretto. Yeah, so we're going to go fix whatever the is making water end up in the bilge. Gnarly. And then I'm getting a haircut.
Talk to the camera.
And then I'm getting a haircut.
No, in your Will's Workshop. Talk to the camera and say complete sentences before doing the thing.
I am in the middle. I'm in the beginning of a Will's Workshop. The audience needs to pay attention to this. Water in the bilge. The first thing you have to do is taste it. It's terrible. It's the worst first step, but it's a pretty critical one.
You know, you could start out with smelling it. You don't have to go right to putting it in your mouth.
Get out of my workshop. No, I tasted it. I already did this. I'm gonna do it again so that the audience can see. Oh, it was bad the first. It was super salty.
Okay, as long as it's salty and not something else.
Oh, I gave it away.
We can always cut
What's
it out.
it gonna be? When we bought the boat, it was full of like 2 inches of water, and we asked the previous owner, like, why is there so much water in the bilge? She's like, yeah, it's a wet bilge. And for everybody who's boaters out there, there's no wet bilges. If you have a wooden boat, maybe, but your bilge shouldn't be wet. So we did get it dry. It ended up being a lot of fresh water leaks, very interestingly enough. But now, anytime there's water in there, we know there's a problem. Short stories get long. All right. Get my head into frame here. As I discussed earlier, the first thing we gotta do is taste the water. It's a terrible step. You're not gonna look forward to it, but it tells you a lot about what's going on. The main thing you're looking for is fresh water or salt water. Your water systems can generally be divided by those two, maybe a third for the black water system, but hopefully you never have to taste that. So I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna taste it and let you guys know what we're dealing with: fresh water or salt water. Just need a little bit there. Oof. Yeah, that's salty. Woo. This is very salty water. So now to figure out the culprit. Where is this water coming from? It doesn't rain here, so we know it's not coming in from the top anywhere. So it's something below the water line. The next point of deduction we have is that it is in the rear section of the bilge, and our bilge is baffled into 3 sections. So because that water is standing in the aft section, there's a good chance that the leak or the problem is happening in any point of the boat from where I'm standing and backwards. So we'll just start looking around. We'll do a quick visual inspection and see if we can't find any leaks that we can close up or fix. All right, I'm not sure if you guys were able to see it, but it looks like the intake through hole for our water maker has some corrosion around where the hose meets the actual bronze through hole. So we'll give that a little further inspection and see if there's anything there that we can't fix. I just got a good look at it. You just got a good look at it. And I think we would all agree that the culprit here is the broken hose clamp that is holding the white hose onto the bronze through hole. So let's go back into the workshop, get the tools we need, and come back here and fix it. You'd never know what the manufacturer of the hose clamp used for the tightening and loosening apparatus. Sometimes it's a flathead, sometimes it's a Phillips, sometimes it's a hex head. So go ahead and just grab a nice multi-tool. You'll be prepared as you flip and flop the different brands. Next thing's next. If you don't have so many spares in your workshop that you are drowning in them, you're not doing it right. So I went ahead and got a big old box of stainless steel hose clamps. I am sure I have the right size in here, so we'll go ahead, we'll pop the old one off, we'll get a new one on there, we'll clean up any damage, and then we will monitor and see if that fixes our problem. We got that all cleaned up. Took a brush, some elbow grease, and a little dab of water, but wasn't too hard at all. Now we'll know for sure if any new water is coming out of that hose. It'll start to form the same type of corrosion as I just wiped away. Very good.
Hey guys, real time M here again. I feel like you're seeing or are going to see a lot of my non-sailing face. We're in our little swanky apartment in Penasco, and I'm here right now to answer our most frequently asked question. How do we provision? We get this question all the time. Even before we started the YouTube channel, all of our friends, all of our family wanted to know how we were getting food and how we were keeping it on the boat. Get ready to nerd out a little bit about food consumption with me. We filmed a lot of this, but I think some of it is just so much easier to explain to you versus trying to insert a clip and do a voiceover. So hopefully it all comes together well. Come along for the ride. It's going to be a little bit of a new adventure for both of us. Provisioning for us is infinitely more complicated than just hopping in your car and going to your local supermarket. Our car is our dinghy, and unfortunately, they don't build many shops directly accessible via water. It also looks a little different every place we go. Sometimes we're hauling 100 pounds of groceries or so between the 2 backpacks, making a mile-long trek through the literal desert, and just like praying that any cold items we have survive the trek back to the refrigerator. Other times, it's as easy as renting a car, driving to the grocery store, doing things the normal way, driving back, loading up the dinghy, and taking it back to the boat. So a little more normal, but also a little more complicated. Thankfully, this is going to be one of those easy times. Escondido was kind of like our launching point for a while. We were in and out of Loretto Bay area for a few months, and anytime we needed laundry provisions, we basically just ran into Escondido for maybe a long weekend or so, and then headed back out. We're not made of money, so we weren't spending a lot of time there or renting a mooring ball for a couple months so that we automatically had it to come back to. That's not in our budget. So it was always a predetermined thing for a predetermined amount of time.
always a short period of time, and then we were spending any additional time over in Honeymoon Cove, like we've talked about. The office personnel at the marina, they're who you talk to about rental cars. They make it really easy. They book it for you. Maricia behind the desk was an absolute angel. We loved interacting with her. She was very sweet, very kind. So the morning that Will went up to do all that laundry, he went into the office and made a request for the rental car, but he requested it for the following morning. So before we went and picked up the keys the following morning, we needed to run through our provisioning list. And this is where the provisioning process for us really starts. If you've watched any of our previous videos, I'm sure you've heard us say the phrase, we like data, and we really do. Everything that happens on board pretty much is documented in some kind of spreadsheet or another. If you're interested in any of that data, you can join our Patreon. That's all I'll say about that. But when we provisioned for the final time in the United States before heading down to Baja, we bulk bought basically everything. Popped into Costco, expected to be off-grid for a couple months, so we were buying copious amounts of protein. We weren't sure when the next time we were going to get protein is, and we had never fished off the boat before, so we weren't sure how prevalent that was going to be, how much fish we were really going to catch, if it was going to be quality fish, blah, blah, blah. So we were really bulk buying protein and keeping it frozen. We bought like 2 cases of different kinds of sodas and a bunch of LaCroix because we drink a load of that stuff. Bought a ton of snacks because we knew we were heading into a foreign country and weren't going to be able to get our favorite snacks anymore. So we overbought basically everything intentionally. And so what I did when we started the Baja Haha was I took an inventory of all the groceries we bought, put it into a spreadsheet, and then tacked anything on top of that. So obviously, that was a big stretch, buddy. And then I kept close track during the haha of what we were actually consuming. So I was keeping track of things like how much we were eating in one sitting, what the typical selling quantity was, how it was measured, how quickly the fresh fruit and veg was going bad, things like that. You get the idea. So at the end of the haha, we were almost out of all of those groceries. It was about a 2-month process from San Diego up to La Paz. And so at the end of those 2 months, we were almost out of groceries, and I theoretically had enough data that I could accurately predict how much and what we would need over a predetermined amount of time with a set number of crew. So there's only 2 of us on board. I kept that in mind when I installed all the data into the spreadsheet. I did end up factoring in a 2-week buffer into the final numbers, just so we never truly ran out of food and had time to plan to get to another town should we lose track of time, which has happened. The less you need a schedule in your life, the more you find that you just completely disregard what time is to a normal person. So in real time, as you're seeing me right now, it has been almost a full year of using that sheet. And in that full year, I had one instance, a single instance where the sheet failed. And the reason that sheet failed is because I took out the 2-week buffer and we have lost track of time. It was our very last provisioning run. We were in Bay of LA and we had already decided we were going to do our haul out. And we had already decided that we were going to get an apartment. And so we didn't want a ton of excess groceries that we needed to bring from the boat to the apartment. And therefore we underbought. So by the time we basically got to Penasco, we were practically cleared out of groceries. But in the end, it really turned out okay. Because we were in a place where we could just quickly run out and grab cheap tacos somewhere. So it all worked out, and now I know that I need to keep that 2-week buffer from here on out, and I've actually decided that next year I'm going to add an additional week into that buffer, a 3rd week. Not because we're intending to go more off-grid, but because we're planning on jumping countries more frequently, and with that comes a quarantine period. So you may not be able to get off your boat immediately upon entering the country. So I want to have an additional buffer in case something happens with entry and exit of a country. So enough of that. Let's get into what an actual provisioning day looks like for us. We break it down into 3 parts: pre, post, and actual provisioning. So during pre-provisioning, we go through every food compartment on the boat. Everywhere we store food, we open it, clean it out, go through every single food item that we still have. And this is nice because with the dog especially, they get really dirty really fast. So they hoard things like sand and dog hair. And so by going through them between every single provisioning, we get a chance to vacuum them out and give them a nice wipe down. Keeps the boat clean, especially in food areas. You want to make sure you're keeping those areas clean and bug free. So that's what we did. So we go through every food compartment on the boat, and that includes the refrigerator, the freezer,
our dry pantry in the galley, the cupboard under the floor in the galley, cupboards under the stairs, underneath the mattress in the rear cabin. We have 3 small compartments in the floor in the aft cabin, and then 1 larger floor compartment in the V-berth. And so all of those places get completely cleaned out and sorted. We can provision for a long time, a very long time. Our average provisioning cycle last year was 2.5 months or 10 weeks. So we're buying 10 weeks of groceries at one time. This allowed us to spend more time off grid and less time worrying about finding an even remotely convenient grocery store. Now, once we have a clear idea of what is present on the boat, I plug those numbers into my sheet, apply the appropriate amount of crew and length of time, and I get my final numbers. I do go through the list one final time as a check to make sure there aren't any redundancies. So for example, we don't need to buy every type of salad dressing or every type of liquor on the list or every spice on the list. So I go through and make sure that those have an appropriate number beside them. It's very simple. It takes me about 30 seconds to do the whole list. Now, one final note about the list. I do have an entirely separate dedicated calculator section for alcohol. It's extremely expensive, so I don't want to be overbuying it. And if I know a crew member doesn't drink or is underage, I don't want to be including them in that final number. Now we get to actual provisioning. The physical act of provisioning is chaos. It is complete and utter chaos. It's so hectic. It takes a full day running from store to store from about 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're trying to make sure we get things like the freshest produce, the best proteins. We have to buy our cold items last because it's so hot that you don't want them sitting in the car as you're driving from store to store. And we're also trying to ensure that we get the lowest price. We are on a budget. In places like the US, price differences aren't as prevalent, I feel, but in the really rural Mexican towns like what we were in last year, especially ones that have a big influx of American tourists like the Laredo Bay area, they have specific stores that are geared towards the tourists, and they're always wildly more expensive, but they carry familiar brands and familiar ingredients. So it's a give and take. We are very selective about what we purchase there. So while we get all of our produce and all of our protein, as long as it looks safe, from the local shops, we get things like peanut butter and familiar snacks and mayonnaise from the Gringo store. Once we're back at the boat, we start the post-provisioning process.
Yay!
So this is kind of like a divide and conquer moment. It's really easy in a place like Escondido where we have a dinghy dock and a car. So Will is typically going from car to dinghy to boat to dinghy to car, doing a couple rounds of unloading. And then I'm back at the boat putting things in their respective homes. This looks a lot like what you do in your own home, but the major difference is that we try to eliminate as much waste as possible. So things like prepackaged cookies and crackers, I take out of the cardboard box, and if they're in a plastic sleeve, I'll leave them in the plastic sleeve. Otherwise, they go into a normal container that goes into the dry pantry. The reason we do that is twofold. It's so we're not gathering unnecessary large pieces of trash, like the boxes, in the boat when we don't have access to a normal trash can. And also, on top of that, insects like cockroaches tend to lay their eggs in the glue on boxes. And the last thing we need is an infestation of cockroaches on the boat. If that happened, I would jump overboard and you would literally never see me again. So twofold reason there. The other thing we do is take all of our produce out of its original packaging, portion it out, and then use our vacuum sealer, our Food Saver vacuum sealer, to obviously vacuum seal it. The vacuum sealer was a huge investment. Totally recommend it to anyone else who is long-term cruising or just needs a better way to store food. I think I got it off Amazon for like $70, $75. It's fantastic. We don't need to thaw out things that we aren't going to eat immediately. We can just pull one package out. It also is a lot easier for our ancient freezer to freeze things that are in smaller packaging. We love our Food Saver. We use it every single time we provision. Highly recommend to anyone out there trying to do the same thing we're doing. Once everything's unloaded and has found its home, our hectic day of reprovisioning is finally over. We are usually thoroughly exhausted,
But honestly, there's really no better feeling than having a boat full of food and knowing that you can go off grid again and be gone for a while and not have to worry about consumption. It's really nice. So yeah, that kind of concludes our provisioning. I'm kind of refining the spreadsheet still, so it's not available for public anywhere, but if you're interested in that, if you think it would be beneficial to you or to someone you know, drop a comment and I'll work a little harder on refining that and try to make it public sometime in the near future. I hope you guys found this informative. I hope this answers our most frequently asked question. I know it was a crazy amount of me just kind of like sitting here talking at you, but I wanted to make sure I gave you a thorough answer because it's our most frequently asked question. But yeah, again, if you have any further questions or you need me to explain something in more detail or you want to see the list, please drop a comment. I'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, thanks for watching. I hope you found it informative. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy Wednesday or Sunday if you're on Patreon. We release early on Patreon. And we'll see you next week where you finally get to meet the fabled Mitch and Christine. Cheers, guys. Yip, yip.